Nation. We're back.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Fire the Cannon. I'm Rocky.
I'm Megan, and we are Fire the Cannon. All right, so here we were.
In a row getting that boom right.
Well, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
100 episodes.
And look, here we are, Texas with a bye week. Us thinking we were going to have some kind of laid back, easy weekend, and you know, not as much to talk about. We're going to ramp up for OU weekend, but my God, what a crazy weekend in college football. Lots to talk about, lots of insanity, of course, lots of upsets. Texas's schedule not looking like such a, and I'm using the heavy air quotes here, weak SEC schedule anymore, is it, Rocky?
You know, we'll talk about it today, but that narrative about the gauntlet, they beat each other up. Oh, the schedule's released. Texas got the easy schedule. And now people are like, they're going to lose 5 more games. Like,
right.
We'll talk about it. The narrative flip-flops week to week of, you know, maybe it looks like we do actually have a tough schedule and our neighbors down the road are actually getting the easy way out the rest of the season with no Ole Miss, no Georgia, no Bama. So anyway, we'll talk about it. It's going to be fun. So we're also going to talk about Sark had his press conference today. Lots to talk about. It is OU hate week. I know you really hate OU because you're a good Longhorn. Just say no.
Just say no.
And tell us about the flag behind you.
Yes. So I've actually had this flag for quite some time. It's actually, I love it. That's interchangeable. The team that you're playing is interchangeable. I keep it on Oklahoma at all times. But yeah, I've had this since 2008, something like that, 7, 8.
Pretty
so
cool.
Got to rock it this time of year. Got to show exactly where we're at and what we're thinking. So got to beat Oklahoma. No question.
Yes. We have some fun announcements that were made for the Texas football schedule coming up. We'll talk about that. Like you said, upset city this weekend. So many big top 12 teams went down right this week. We'll talk about that and who upset them, which is even more fun. And then we'll talk some OU hate week. We'll do the full preview live Thursday, Red River Rivalry. But we can talk some OU hate week. Sark had some great comments about the environment of the game. And you and I, we can talk about our experiences, kind of give a little preview of what we're looking for the weekend. And already some people are coming with some great predictions about the game. The spread we know is over 2 touchdowns. That's crazy for a rivalry. But Megan, how was your weekend?
Yeah. Look, I felt like it was going to be kind of laid back, kind of chill. And for the most part, it wasn't the crazy tailgating that I'm used to. But I got to tell you, it was kind of nice to sit and watch the games that were on for one weekend. And it felt busy just with all the craziness that was going on. But, gotta love it. Gotta love seeing everybody. Got to visit with my sister a little bit. She's a teacher up in Round Rock. So she and I went and had some sister beers, which was nice. Good to catch up.
That is nice. But she needs a break.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I could not do what she does. She's 10 years younger than me. She's been teaching for over 10 years now, and she's a rock star. The stories she comes home with and some of the things that teachers have to put up with nowadays and just the behavior of some kids nowadays. I would have either been fired
and the behavior of some parents nowadays.
Well, the parents are a big part of it too, right? But yeah, I would have been fired or put in jail within the first day of me trying to do her job. There's no question. She's an angel for doing what she does. But sometimes you just gotta go have some beers with your sister and let her vent about some stuff.
You do. So. Well, good. I'm glad you wanted to try to get with her this weekend. Nadia and I went to Providence. It's so beautiful. So beautiful this time of year before it gets too cold. Actually, didn't get too cold there, but it was really beautiful. We went up for the Brown-Harvard rugby game, women's rugby game, big rivalry. It was a game that went to the last second. Brown couldn't score that last try. They were at the goal line for like the last 5 minutes of the game and couldn't get in. But it was a great game. The team is just a wonderful group of young women, great group. My friend Roz is the coach, so we got to tour around there and made more new friends. Nadia loves the campus, of course, there. It's so beautiful. We eat lots of good food when we're there, which is nice.
Love it. Yeah, it looked amazing. And I'm sure the weather was quite nice compared to here too.
70s. And it just feels like when it's sunshine and 70s, it's beautiful. But it felt like really hot. It felt like upper 80s when that sun was on us. And I was loving it. But, the kids,
you are a tropical people.
They're from all over the world, the students, right? So you assume that, they're in the Northeast, they're used to the cold. But one of the girls was like, when the the sun started going down. She was getting chilly. She's like, I'm from California. This is cold. But it was beautiful. We had a good time. Yeah, we had a good time. It was fun.
That's
so
great.
We got back late last night trying to get caught up on the world. But I did manage to watch lots of college football over the weekend. So that was good. Yeah.
A lot going on.
Tonight, just for people who are watching, Monday Night Football is the Saints at Kansas City Chiefs. Ooh, that's going to be good. I'm going to go see the Saints next week for the Thursday night game. So I'm excited. That'll be fun.
That'll be great. Yeah.
All right. So big announcement. Let's start with the big announcement that was made today. Everybody's been waiting to hear, especially with F1 weekend and Eminem concert and all the things. Everybody's been waiting to hear Georgia at Texas. What's the game time? Georgia losing to Bama last week had people wondering, is it going to still be a primetime thing?
Right.
They announced it, Megan, 6:30 p.m. ABC.
Look, I know it's not. I know you're probably the only person in the world not excited about that game time. I know you were hoping to get to Eminem, the Eminem concert later on in the evening, but I'm excited. I think this game deserves, it's got all the hype around it. It deserves everything, all the attention it can get. And I think it should be a primetime game, in that 6:30, 7 o'clock slot. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Of course, my jams is to tailgate all day. So we'll be setting up bright and early. We're probably going to get there earlier than we normally would for other games, which means we'll be out there 6 o'clock in the morning, probably setting up and getting ready. I know, kill me now. But we'll be setting up and getting everything ready. And then partying all day. So I'll be nice and lubed up, nice and properly lubricated with my adult beverages by the time kickoff comes. So it should be a good one.
Megan. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Listen, I sprint every hour of my life, I feel like. So it'll be a good time. Definitely looking forward to it. But and that's what we've got replay for, right? I can always go back and catch the game again. So no, it's going to be fun. Nighttime game. Hopefully it won't be too windy. We'll get a good drone show for this game, like we missed out on with Mississippi State. So I think all the hype and the pomp and circumstances there, I think it's going to be a lot of fun having the game at night. So you looking forward to it? I know you're slightly disappointed, but
I'm pretty disappointed. I love Eminem. He doesn't tour often, like coming to Austin, and I've been waiting almost a year for when they've announced whatever it was they announced this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, these tickets are so hard, the Georgia Texas tickets, hard to get, so expensive. Like, I'm not selling my ticket. I'm not losing my ticket. Like, I will be there. This is one of the biggest games maybe ever at DKR. I wouldn't miss it. But part of me is pretty sad because I was the only one really pushing for that, like 2:30, 3 o'clock game that I could be at the concert by 7 or 8. But that's okay. That's okay. Texas better win now. I'm going to be really mad.
Right. Well, hey, you can always come over. I live just up the road from Circuit of the Americas, so you could always come over after. We'll take my UTV over and just listen to it from outside if you want.
I might do that because I don't know. By the time I get out of that game, it's going to be crazy. Game 6:30 p.m. It's on ABC. So it looks like things are lining up. Georgia took care of business last week. We'll talk about that game in a minute, but Georgia took care of business, so they're still hanging around in the rankings. What do you think this could maybe be a top 5 matchup? The last top 5 matchup at DKR was Ohio State when Ohio State came to DKR.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So I think this will absolutely will, looking at this weekend, of course, if Texas handles business against Oklahoma, there's a potential for a big hype up game here between top 5 teams in Austin, which we know Game Day likes to come to. This won't be the first time if Game Day does choose to come to DKR against Georgia. It won't be the first time that Texas has had multiple game days over the season. Of course, College Game Day was there at Michigan at the Big House. Back in the LSU season, they were at DKR. And there have been multiple times, I think it was the Bama season, I believe, that last year that Texas had multiple games where Game Day came there. So listen, we know this, we say it. I'm sure it makes opponents' eyes roll. But Texas is a big brand. I don't care who you are. It gets people hyped up. On that note, a quick shout out to Texas volleyball for handling business against Florida. Florida actually did announce the second highest sellout crowd that they've ever had at their stadium for that Texas game. So in all 3 SEC games, now that Texas has played volleyball, they have had record-breaking crowds there. So And those have been away games, right? Those have been away SEC games. So don't tell me Texas isn't a brand. Don't tell me people aren't excited. So at that particular game against Florida, there was a crowd of 9,255. So Texas just setting records left and right. Look, like I said earlier, Texas is a big brand. People are hyped to see them. People are hyped to watch Texas. They're hyped to watch their team play Texas. They're hyped to be at Texas. So yeah, I think there's a high possibility. Again, if Georgia handles business next week, if OU handles or Texas handles business against OU, yeah, I think it's kind of a no-brainer in my mind for game day to come to that top 5 matchup at DKR.
Yeah, so we definitely can't look past OU. We'll talk about that. But looking at that week, talking about game day, could they come? It looks like right now the only possibility of being another big-time top 10 matchup would be Bama at Tennessee. I would think they would take the number 1 ranked team hosting a rematch of a Sugar Bowl, right? So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, especially now that they've announced that it's an ABC game too, an ESPN/ABC game, that probably lends to getting a game day, which is, you can't pay for that kind of publicity, right? Cal just got their first game day ever, and they had so much publicity for the day. That kind of publicity is just, you market your university to millions of college, fanatics. So and they only have 14, 15 a year of the 100 and something schools. So to be chosen is a big deal.
Absolutely. No, I think it would be a good deal. I think we might be seeing something where the maybe game day, big noon kickoff heads out to the Bama Tennessee game, and then college game day comes to Austin. But either way, I think the game is going to have a lot of hype around it and a lot of excitement. But we can't be looking ahead just yet. So,
and neither is the team. The football team is not looking ahead.
Right. So, of course, today being Monday, Sark had his weekly press conference talking about looking forward to the OU game, how the team is preparing. You think this team is ready? Do you think this team's locked in and focused? What are you seeing from this?
It is. We saw Sark's press conference today. It's game week, right? He had his weekly presser. This team is locked and loaded. They are loose but confident. They're happy. They're joyful but intense, right? One of our Austin media guys, like, if I had to describe it, I would say the mood is intense. Like, they seem really joyful. Like, let's play this clip real quick of Jahdae Barron coming in. I think was it Corey Mose that caught this moment? This is pretty neat.
I just know time's coming. I just know to be patient. Free taste kid. Free taste kid. Free taste. Like you're in a good mood. Why a good mood this week? I don't know. It's always blessed to wake up, and to have another opportunity at football. So I just told him I'm in a little bit of goofy mood today. I don't know why.
I like it. Loose, comfortable, confident. Yeah. Thoughts?
It made me smile. First time I saw that, I was grinning ear to ear. I think it's good to see, our senior leadership in there and excited, and they got some swagger going to them. Like you said, loose and confident. It's nice to see them not uptight, but at the same time, they know the importance of the game coming up. They know the job at hand, the business that they have to handle. So I like seeing them comfortable. I like seeing them having a good time with the media. I like seeing them knowing who they are, having fun as a team, having fun as individuals. But also understanding the purpose. I think, I know we say this all the time. We're becoming a culture content podcast here, but yeah, I think that culture is really starting to shine through. The guys are getting it. They're having a good time. They're enjoying football again, right? Football's fun again. So that was fun to watch, I thought.
It was. Jahdae's been on the sideline of this on the field of this game for the blowing the big lead, the 49-0 butt kicking, the rough start, chasing it and losing it at the end. He knows about this game, the ebbs and flows, the massive shifts in momentum. Like, he knows about it. But also, Sark has talked about times if you're prepared, then you don't have to be nervous, right? You don't have to be scared or intimidated when you're prepared. You come out with confidence, and you can see that when he's smiling like that, it's not that he's not taking it seriously. It's that he's confident in their preparation, right? They know they're prepared, and they probably have what he feels is a pretty damn good game plan.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Look, we know this game can go either way. We know that the hate is there on both sides of the team for each team, but yeah, I think this team is locked and ready. I think they're focused. We talked about the intensity. I think we've got a clip for that coming up a little bit later, but I don't think, looking forward, it's hard to describe if you haven't been to Texas OU weekend and you haven't been a part of that game, you haven't experienced that atmosphere, it's hard to describe it. It's hard. It's something that's hard that you can't explain it. You got to be there. And I think that's going to really benefit Texas, having some of this leadership that is a little more seasoned now. You know, we've got Arch in his 3rd year. We've got Jaddy Barron that's been there for a minute. We've got guys that have been there, done that. Our O-line, you know, Jake Majors. Let's talk about him for a second. He was brought up in the press conference today with Texas kind of suffered last year not having that leadership of Jake Majors. I think Majors went out. What was it? The like 3rd play of the game?
The 3rd or 4th play of the game, the first series.
Yeah. It was really early in the game last year. And I think that over the course of a game, of a really intense game that's a high emotion and needs a lot of focus and leadership, I think we saw the lack. You know, Jake Majors was a missing piece, a key piece that was missing last year. So having him back, I think, is a really great thing. Let's look at, you know, Sark talked about that a little bit. Let's look at that. Do we have that clip?
Which part?
About Jake Majors.
No, I have the one of Quinn, that Quinn is back.
Okay, cool. Well, we could talk about that too. But yeah, I mean, look, a lot of leadership coming back. A lot of, you know, Jake Majors mentioned earlier today in his press availability that it was hard for him to sit on that sideline last year and watch his team through the ups and downs. Like you mentioned, got down early, then fought back, and then let go of that lead right at the end. So, you know, having that leadership, having that, you know, we're talking about Barron being loose and easy. We have Jake Majors talking about the focus of the team and how excited he is to be back and contribute and help the team succeed this year. I think all of those are key pieces and really important for a Texas victory this year.
All right. So one of the clips we do have of Sark is talking about Quinn being back, right?
Yeah.
So the Quinn's first Red River rivalry shootout was the 49-0 game, right? And he had come off a couple of weeks of not playing and from an injury, and here he comes out and just lights it up. Sark's play calling was amazing. Then the next year, it's that struggle bus. Venables had a plan. They pressured him, confused him, and it could be in part of losing Jake Majors, who is on the line, looking at protections, calling things on the line. That is half the job up at the line is Sark, Quinn reading and Jake Majors reading, right? So that was crucial that when Majors went out, which there's lots of factors in these multiple turnovers, but they got down early. Quinn was rattled, but then came back and lit it up. But it was too late. Like, they took the lead, but it wasn't enough to pull away. They lost in the last second of that game, lost a bit of that game. But Quinn's back. So let's hear what Sark had to say about it.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I think a couple things. One, you know, Quinn worked last week for our 3 practices. He practiced again today. I thought he looked good coming off the bye. I think if anybody benefited from the time off, it was probably him. You know, we're going to monitor him daily just to kind of see how he continues to progress. But I feel good about if how he was today. I feel good about him going Saturday, but that remains to be seen. And I have no hesitation with Arch going in the game. I think he's proven that to us over 2.5 games of football that he's really played in and competed in, that he can run our offense and he can be successful. And so, like I said, like I talked about the offensive line, you know, we're fortunate to be in the position that we're in, to have 2 quality players at the quarterback position that we have confidence in and that their teammates have confidence in.
2 quality quarterbacks. We know most teams in the country would take R1 or R2, and many of them would take number 3, Trey Owens.
Agreed.
Unfortunate is Texas, but that comes from people, the talent wanting to be in Sark's system and be coached hard by Sark and Milwee.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think everybody's excited to have Ewers back. Again, this false narrative of, is Ewers going to take over the job? Is he going to transfer? What's going to happen? There's no question. Arch, sorry. There's no question about that behind the scenes. We know that Quinn Ewers, this is his team. He's QB1. Sark has been very emphatic about that from day one, even after the injury to Ewers came in. Again, we know that Arch performed really well. He performed excellent. The hope is this year that Texas gets a commanding lead and is in a position to be able to get Arch some meaningful playing time as he goes in. But make no mistake, this is Quinn's team. I love how Sark was trying to be coy about that. If we had to go today, we don't know. We're going to see how he does. We're going to see how he performs. Listen, for all intents and purposes, he said that Ewers is going to start this game. So it is his game to command. It is his team to lead. I mean, it's exciting to have him back. And we should remind folks, you know, sometimes there's a little hesitation. Is he going to be rusty? Is he going to have to knock that off? Is he going to have to get back in the groove? Keep in mind, last time that Ewers was hurt and came back, his returning game was the OU game. It went pretty well for Texas. It went pretty well for Texas in that game. So at 49-0, I think he performed pretty well. So I don't think there's as much concern. And again, this is a Ewers that has 2 more years experience from that one, right? He's got a lot of time under his belt. He's played in this game a few times now. He knows what it's like. He knows where the hype is and what it's like running through that tunnel of hatred, right? And then crossing over at the 50-yard line and having hatred turn into adoration. So I think it's going to be a really cool game. I think it's exciting to have our guys back. A lot of guys were banged up this week. Let's talk about that a little bit, Rocky. We know Texas saw some attrition. They saw some guys go out, some guys playing a little banged up. How important was this bye week going into OU weekend?
Well, Sark started the press conference today about that, saying it was a much needed, not just physically, but mentally. He talked about the gauntlet of the SEC isn't just physical. It's also very much a mental grind. And you can see from the teams, that weren't strong and weren't prepared and didn't come in mentally ready on the road this week, that can happen, right, to any team. It's a long grind. And he talked about that this was a great time. And there was, like the biggest injury room we know since before the season started was running back room.
Right.
Jaden Blue was recovering. Trey Wisner's recovering. Feels like every running back in that room has some kind of
running
injury.
back room is recovering.
Yes, the running back room is recovering, and they use that time. But also, it's important to remember, like Derek Williams at safety, like that rotational depth. We're hoping to get Derek Williams back, and all the other players. Jelani McDonald came back, but we don't know yet. I'm sure those 2 weeks were good for him too. So there's probably a lot of guys just dinged up from those first 5 weeks. Perfect time to get that rest and mental recovery. Some of them got to go home to family over the weekend. They got to go back to their high schools and, or for some football games. So there was a lot of that this weekend too. So just to go and disconnect for a minute, rest their bodies, rest their minds, and be refreshed to come back. And also what always worries me in the bye week is especially because we see this with other schools, is sometimes these student athletes get in trouble. Right. That's when they go home and get in trouble, or they're, caught doing
Georgia.
something, or
Alabama. Yeah.
They get in trouble. And for everyone to be focused and disciplined and come back to campus with no
arrests,
or drama or negative attention to the team,
right.
Just positive focus.
No distractions.
No distractions. That's huge. Yeah. What do you think about the bye week? Was it a good time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked a little bit about this earlier. The way that Texas's schedule has kind of lined up this year, in my opinion, has been pretty favorable. Of course, we start with, a team and kind of ramp into the season, even with our SEC schedule, especially. We'll talk about the strength of Texas's schedule here in a little bit. But, we start off with Mississippi State to go into the SEC schedule. And look, I think it's fair to say there was a little bit of disappointment on how Texas performed against Mississippi State. I think there were a lot of things that could be cleaned up, a lot of things that need to be addressed. And again, so for me, this bye week could not have happened at a better time. I think a lot of the issues that we saw kind of rear their heads at Mississippi State, like you mentioned, were heavily because of their bodies are banged up a bit, right? Our guys are just a little beat up. So having, being able to start that SEC schedule and then take a little bit of a break and analyze everything, like, all right, where do we need to improve? What do we need to get better before you really get into the thick of your conference schedule, I think is really important. Again, with the injuries that we've seen throughout the team, not just in the running back room, but, we've got guys on offense and defense that are just banged up. It's just been a tough first third of the season. So, I think it came at the perfect time. And also something I think is kind of fortunate and very favorable for Texas this year is that we actually worked out 2 bye weeks this week or this year. So right now I think it's coming at a critical time for Texas. They can prep for Oklahoma, which I think is a really important game to the schedule this year. And then, later on in the season, as we get through that next third of the season, Texas has another bye week to prep really for the last leg of a really tough schedule. So I think it worked out well for Texas this year. I think next year is going to be a lot more brutal as far as the games that they play on the road and how those bye weeks play out. So yeah, I think this is kind of the dipping the toe in the water for Texas before they fully jump into that SEC schedule. I think it was really, really good timing.
Yeah. So you mentioned the things that they needed to clean up from the first 5 games, particularly Mississippi State. Turnovers, right. Huge. We know in the last game, Jaden Blue had 2 fumbles that were lost. Sark mentioned Jaden Blue, like looking fast and healthy and ready to go, but also Trey Wisner being, both of them will play. There's some reports that maybe Wisner is going to be the lead back until some things get cleaned up. We'll see. But Sark made it very clear, and he doesn't need to, like he said, he sleeps better if he tells the truth. Sark said that they need Jaden Blue to make it through the season, and we know they need all the backs to make it through the season. But Jaden Blue is a talent. He has speed. He has power. Like there's things that they still need. He has a huge role. Pass catching. There's still a lot for him to do. So I hope part of the last 2 weeks was also building up his confidence and getting him ready to jump back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think Jaden Blue is one of those guys that you don't give enough credit for the leadership that he brings to the team. He's been around this team. He's been a part of Sark's offense for his entire career now. And he's waited his turn. He's the next man up, right? And so I think it is really important to have his leadership there, his understanding of how the offense runs, and his ownership. We've seen it now. He has had some mistakes. He's had some issues with turnovers the past couple of games. He's had some issues where he felt he hasn't played his best game, despite putting up pretty decent numbers. But he always takes ownership of that. He comes back and says, look, I can play better. I can do better. I can be better. And I credit to Sark as well. If you're seeing a young guy come up, a true freshman, Sark's probably not going to put him in front of the media after a rough game, right? But he knows that Blue has that leadership, has that maturity, and that understanding of what he needs to do, and gives him the opportunity to go in front of the media and just be frank, be honest about things. Like, look,
exactly.
I know what I need to work on. I see it. I mean, and this is immediately post game, right? This isn't after coaching up. So I think looking at that, just seeing that kind of maturity and leadership, that's really important in the locker room and on that sideline. So yeah, I don't want to understate the importance of having players like Blue around, whether he's RB1 or RB2. We know that they're both going to get a lot of playing time, and having having his leadership and having that mentality on the sideline is going to be really important for Texas, for OU, and for looking forward.
Exactly. One of the things Sark mentioned, there's a couple things we'll still talk about. The energy. He talked about the intent, the energy, but he said that's really sparked a lot by the DB room. And that was kind of interesting. And he went on to list the players and the energy they bring and how their infectious energy spreads to the team. And we haven't really heard that before about the energy that the DBs bring. We saw Jade Barron's big smile, but let's listen to Mookie, because I guess they asked him about bringing the energy. I can hear Michael Taft talk all day. Here's Mookie talking about the energy the DBs bring.
You speak about that secondary. Sark also talked about y'all in practice. You, Jade, Gilbo, bringing what he called juice to practice. What does that look like? And also, why do you all feel the need to kind of have that role in the squad?
Yeah, well, if you look on every team, the DBs are always the ones trying to celebrate the most, even when they don't even make a play. When they get beat and the quarterback overthrew the ball by 10 yards, they're over here. Yeah, so we try to emulate that. Like, the DB's got to have the most juice. And so Manny does a great job of that. Jade does a great job of that. I try my best to get everybody going, because at the end of the day, we're here. We come to practice every day, so you might as well put a smile on your face. You might as well try to encourage somebody today that's maybe not having the best day ever. And so I try to walk into the building every single day with a smile on my face, trying to be there for my teammates because, like I said, I'm living the dream. I mean, when I went into the backyard and I played backyard football growing up as a 7-year-old, it was, all right, Texas versus OU. All right, we're number one, y'all are number two. No, y'all are number one, we're number two. And so I'm living the dream. How could I be mad right now? So I got to go to work every day knowing that I'm living the dream. I take every opportunity with the grain of salt, and I'm very grateful for it.
Living the dream.
That's love that. Fun.
Yeah. I like when he said DBs, like the ball was way overthrown and they're like, yeah. Like, they do that.
It's funny. I have reactions to that every time. I always think it's funny. And there are times, depending on who I'm watching, there are times that I roll my eyes going, come on, man, you didn't do anything there. Calm down. Act
Yeah.
like you've been here before. But there are also times when it's just a vibe, right? And when things are
Mhm.
going your way, and even if the ball's way overthrown, you call it like, you ain't doing nothing over here. You ain't doing nothing. Of course, gonna wear those burnt orange glasses a little bit, but gotta love it. Gotta love the energy. I mean, earlier on in that presser, he also said, like, look, man, this is my team. I would die for this team. I would die for these guys. So gotta love that energy and camaraderie that they all have, especially going into a game like this. Like the Red River Shootout is something where it doesn't matter if you're ranked number one or you're not ranked at all. I feel like this is one of those few games where it absolutely means nothing. It just does not matter because there's so much energy, so much motivation here. I mean, we saw this. We talked about this on previous episodes, but what was it? 2015. Charlie Strong came in as the Texas came in as I believe they were unranked against a number 3 OU team and just
Mhm.
and beat the dog snot out of them. I mean, it
Yep.
was completely unexpected and caught OU off guard. I think it caught Texas off guard, to be quite honest, with that particular game. But and we know that anything can happen here. So the team has to be focused. The team has to be clearly motivated. I don't think the motivation is an issue here. But I do think in the past we've seen the focus wane a little bit, or maybe there've just been little pieces missing. And that's what I'm excited to see this year is that the guys are locked in. This team has had enough time together. We talk culture all the time. The culture is there. The understanding the why is there. The motivation is there. The experience is there. So I think this is going to be this game has a big opportunity, is a big opportunity for Texas to really show what they're made of. Because I think the narrative out there right now, Texas earning that number one spot back on their bye week, who wins the bye week like Texas?
Who gets fired on their day off?
Right. But, Texas earning that number one spot back, there is, some rumblings out there. Did Texas deserve it? Did they earn it? Who have they played? Right. Texas, we've mentioned, I mean, we've said it here on this podcast. Texas has had a ramp up into the season. That doesn't mean their schedule has been easy by any means,
Right.
but there are some questions out there. Does Texas have what it takes to finish through the rest of this schedule, especially after the performance that we saw at Mississippi State? So against Mississippi State. So again, I think this is a really great opportunity for Texas to show up, and this is a statement game. Make no mistake about that. This game coming up this weekend, not only is it all eyes on Texas and OU, all eyes, on Dallas, on this rivalry, this historic rivalry. But this is an opportunity for Texas to make a statement on who they are. And yeah, we deserve that number one. We deserve to be here. And we are exactly who we think we are, which is a really badass team that has the potential and the capability of winning a national championship this year. All of
Mhm.
that, to me, is on the line this weekend against OU. Now, if things don't go Texas's way this weekend, certainly we've seen in the past, we saw it last year, it's not the end all be all, right? This game isn't going to define Texas's season, but it certainly winning it certainly gives Texas the opportunity to make a statement on who they are and that we absolutely should be here and in this conversation.
Yeah, I would say not winning it makes a big statement because OU hasn't shown much. Their offense is so badly ranked in almost every category. They do have a solid defense, but Texas, and we'll talk about this when we break it down Thursday, Texas ranks higher than them in many categories on defense too. Texas
Yeah.
has the third-year quarterback in the third-year system, and there's a lot to be said on why Vegas would pick Texas to be, a 2-touchdown favorite. So I don't know. Number one in the country, everyone's looking at you. I think this is going to define Texas more than it's going to define OU, I think. Because OU has built-in excuses right now. Brand new quarterback, brand new this, brand new O-line, lots of injuries. They have built-in, excuses if it doesn't go their way on Saturday. Texas doesn't have any this Saturday if it doesn't go their way. So, all right, we'll talk about that in a bit. But one thing we do have, Texas does have, is depth, right? Sark has talked about this before the season started. Going to rotate players, going to get the young, talented players who've earned playing time. They're going to be in the rotation. We've seen some of the best players, Jarrett Gibson, Leongo Lafau, Ryan Wingo, Colin Simmons, like these young players getting lots of rotation. The depth is building. Sark talked about the playing lots of players and how this can benefit them, especially late in these really tough games. I'll play that part for you.
Middle linebacker.
Yeah, no, I think overall totality of the team, we've played a lot of players this season, and it's shown to be beneficial to us that we have played a lot of people and played a lot of players. And I think one of the challenges for us as coaches is, yes, we want to put our best players in position to be successful throughout the ball game. But the mindset needs to be to do that. Maybe you need to spell them earlier in the game so that they can be at their best late in the game in the fourth quarter. And so, hey, at linebacker, we're fortunate. We've been playing 5 guys there, really a good 4-man rotation, but we've been playing 5 with Anthony Leonga, David Benda, Mo Blackwell, and Anthony Smith. We've also implemented more defensive personnel groupings. And so we've been going to dime a lot more, where we've even taken one of those guys off the field and played with an extra DB on the field. So all that being said, hopefully we can be more fresh late in the game, because fresh doesn't mean always physically I'm in the best position, but I think mentally it can take its toll when you're worn down. So we want to stay fresh. We're at our best when we're a fresh football team, and that'll be the goal again Saturday.
They're at their best when they're fresh.
Yeah, so fresh and so clean. Look, I think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's nice that when they do rotate, there's not a big drop in talent. Like, they can trust the rotation.
Absolutely. Look, and we've mentioned this before. I'm going to keep saying it because my mind is still going over it. The fact that Texas has depth, not just at 1 or 2 positions, not just at a skill position or 2, but throughout this entire roster. We've seen that come into play already. We were just talking about the importance of having our running backs available, and how that running back room has gone through some tough times, but having those incredible players at 2, at 3, at 4, at 5 deep, right? Texas has been fortunate to be able to get through the schedule where they are right now. And that's, we've talked about this. It's not just one guy out there that is making all the plays, and if he's out, we're screwed. Texas is so deep at every position right now. We're talking 2s and 3s, some even 4s, some deeper than that. It's really fortunate that we're at where we're at. And something that Texas focused on and Sark focused on early in this season too, like we've mentioned, is versatility. Not only is Texas deep at several positions, at every position on the field, but we've also got guys that can go at several different positions and play those positions well. So I think that is something that's been really beneficial to this team, and I think is going to come into play and be a big factor into how Texas performs against a team like OU in a very heated rivalry, in an emotional game. I think that's going to come into play. Being able to rotate players out, being able to put guys in different positions, throw different looks at OU, confuse a young quarterback, and really have that depth and versatility at multiple different positions. That's going to be a huge key to success for Texas in this game.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's one of the things Sark said. He wants to confuse this young quarterback. We know Michael Hawkins Jr. Looks to be OU's maybe savior. Maybe had they played him a little earlier against Tennessee, they might have had something at home, right? It's a huge talent. We'll talk about that when we preview OU. One of the other, we'll kind of wrap up the press conference today, the media availabilities of the players. One of the things that you really wanted to talk about today was David Benda, linebacker Benda, saying he wants to be a part of a field rush.
Yeah,
fans
listen,
rushing the field.
He wants to be a part of that. Now,
yeah,
I want to put in 2 caveats with that. One,
okay.
I feel like Texas has experienced that at his time. They've just been on the receiving end, the not so fun end. And 2, I know a lot of the old heads. I'm one of them. Is Texas doesn't rush the field. Texas does. They kind of got up in arms in that, which I understand the reaction, because absolutely right. Texas does not rush the field unless it's a national championship. Texas doesn't, just like Texas doesn't dogpile unless it's at Omaha for winning it all. Texas, the expectation is to perform like you've been there before, and the goal is always win championships, right? So I agree. Texas is not a program that is going to rush the field for any little win. But what I like to see I think Benda understands that. He's been around. He knows this program. He understands what the expectations are and how we behave. My thinking is that was his way of signaling, hey man, we're going to go to the Natty and we're going to win it all. Because then he gets to be a part of the field rushing, right? Of the
I didn't see
the
it
team
that way
coming
because
on.
the Natty's not at home.
Doesn't matter.
No, but I'm saying, but you can't rush the field where the championship game is being played, you know?
Yeah, you can. Texas did in 05. I was part of it.
No, I'm
We rushed
saying
the field
they're
in
not
05.
going to allow that in 2025, January 20th,
Oh.
2025. Nobody's rushing the field in January
Oh, I think they will.
2025.
I think they will.
No,
I
I think
they
the
will.
stadium securities nowadays are way different. Not college, but like whatever pro stadium it's going to be at.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that's something where you let the college kids have fun. You let people rush the field, and I think we will. I don't know. Again, security can be overwhelmed. I think for me, I read it as, okay, this is the goal. He wants to be a part of it, so it's going to be during the national championship, and that's what we're going to roll with.
I don't know. Yeah, we saw that a lot. Let's go ahead and talk about that, the college football craziness and teams rushing the field. And I think it's very
pros and cons each way.
Yeah, very rarely is it like, yes, this team should rush the field. All right, let's start with Tennessee at Arkansas. That was a game where they rushed the field. Arkansas, upsetting Tennessee. Tennessee was ranked number 4 on last weekend, and they were ranked number 4. Let me go find my schedule. And so Arkansas dominated that game. Tennessee, managed some points, but Arkansas pulled away at the end. One of the things that happened ended up being the biggest story of the game was all this after mess, right? Like the dirtiness during the game, and then the rushing the field, and the Tennessee player that looks to have assaulted fans. Let's play that real quick. I'll play it again in case you didn't. His girl, they both go flying.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. This debate about rushing the field. These kind of things happen.
Yeah. Look, I was at Lubbock in that game where Texas Tech won in overtime, beat Texas, rushed the field, and it got rough. It got chippy, right? There were and this one, at least I can speak to this from the experience. Tech fans there was no safe way for Texas fans the Texas team to leave the field. I watched security. They were understaffed on security, and security did not give a crap in that game, right? They kind of wandered off and did whatever. They didn't create a safe space for Texas to leave the field without people messing with them. And Tech fans got into Texas players' faces, and there were some confrontations, right? There was one question of, did a Texas player shove a Texas Tech fan or a woman? And turns out what had happened was the player had been shoved. Somebody went to the back of the Texas player and shoved him hard in the back, and they went into another fan, right? So for me, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for acting like an asshole. If you're going to rush the field, I get it. Like I'm torn on it in the sense that I think it's fun. Not for Texas, right? But I get it. There are certain circumstances where, hell yeah, rush that field. You've earned it. Have a great time. Get out there. But don't act like a jackass, right? And
they go together, though. Rushing the field and acting like a jackass go together. That's the problem. Every time people rush the field, the videos come out. And the problem is, like, the players, the losing team, right? The visiting team, like you just said, it's not safe for them. It's not safe for the media, the family, the coaching staff, all the trainers, the equipment. Nobody is safe, right? All of that. And then they go up and they yell profanities, ugly words at the players. They put hands on the players. But they get physical with the players. Always we see the videos. But as soon as one player defends themselves or turns around or gets pushed into someone else, they're the problem. There's just no winning when people rush the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, the clip we just saw, from every account so far, the Tennessee player was unprovoked. Granted, like, he was upset the way the game went, no question. But from everything that they've said and everything that we've seen so far, it doesn't look like that Arkansas fan or his girlfriend or the woman that was with him said anything to this player. They were just, kind of in the mix of things. And the Tennessee player just had a reaction. Again, if you're in that situation, you just have to be smarter than that. I think there's absolutely no excuse for how that player acted. I think there's absolutely no excuse for his actions. But you also have to understand that if you're going to rush the field, that's the risk you run. that's the
Yep.
risk you run, right? Like things like that happen quite often. I would say if you're going to rush a field, just stay away from the players altogether. Just avoid them. Go party in the middle of the field. Don't mess with the opposing team. But of course, nobody listens to that, right? There's always going to be
No,
something.
they don't. And schools don't care if they get fined. Schools don't care if they tear down their own, damage their own stadiums. Like,
Right.
to me, it's like, how do some people get to behave that way? I just don't understand it. I will never
Yeah.
understand.
Now, look, I will say this. I was amused by it. It happened last year at Tennessee where they tore down their own goalposts. And then, of course, the goalposts ended up in the river. Tennessee was actually kind of like, F it, we'll pay the fine, whatever, have yourselves a time. I think we saw that with Vandy this year. Listen, I agree. Generally speaking, I don't think every game deserves a field rush. I certainly, and again, this is a little bit of my UTSD coming in here. I don't. Even when Texas was down, even when Texas was having a rough time, we had several teams that rushed the field against us because they beat Texas, and it's the name, the brand, right? Even against a not great Texas team, I don't think every game deserves a field rush. I understand college fans are passionate and they want to express themselves, and they get hyped up over those crazy wins against big programs that their small programs don't always experience. So I get it, but I don't think every single game deserves that. Now, there are some exceptions. I enjoyed the hell out of watching Vandy tear down their own field goal posts and march down Broadway with them. They broke through barriers and were down there partying on Broadway with the goalposts. I'm here for that. An unranked team beating the number one team in the nation that they haven't beat since the 80s. Listen, I'm all for it. Rock out, Vandy. I think the whole nation was behind the Commodores for that game. I loved seeing that because there wasn't aside from the goalpost itself, there wasn't public property destruction. There wasn't just insanity. They just marched it down the road, said cool, dumped it into a river, retrieved it, and now I think this is kind of crazy.
Police, first responders, firemen had to go and retrieve it. That they used taxpayer money, and these firefighters and first responders who could have been doing real work are digging a pole out of the river.
I'm not that upset about it. I get it. I understand the argument against it, but in those cases, again, things went on fire. People weren't rioting. I thought it was cool. And again, they got the field goal post out, and Vanderbilt is actually now cutting up that field goal post into, I think it's like 6 or 4 inch pieces and they're auctioning those pieces off so that they can pay the fine, which I thought was a pretty creative way to do that. Like, I love that, man. I'm here for it.
I think if anybody should rush the field, yes, it's Vanderbilt, because they haven't won anything significant in forever. And you beat the number one team in the country, who wasn't just number one. Yes, they were number one just this 1 week, but they've been dominant for a decade. So to beat Vanderbilt that way, like, just they couldn't get off the field. I mean, the defense couldn't get off the field for Alabama. Vanderbilt at one point had one of the longest drives of entire college football, almost 10 minutes down the field. Alabama couldn't get off the field. They controlled that game. They took it to Bama. It was a great game. So if anyone should rush the field, it would be Vanderbilt. Go down and celebrate. I just don't get how some people are allowed to damage property and drag it. I get it. I think each situation is a little bit different. Again, if they had gone downtown Nashville and were flipping over cars and catching shit on fire and breaking into stores, that might be a different. Other people do for sports too.
Yeah, no, that's happened, and I'm not condoning that, but that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think every situation's a little bit different. Had that happened, then we'd be having a different conversation about that particular march down, with the field goal post. But in this situation with Vandy, I think the nerds handled it pretty well. They were relatively respectful while tearing down their own stadium. I love it. Listen, I truly believe that the whole nation was rooting for Vanderbilt. And like you mentioned, this wasn't just a game where Vandy was out there on a wing and a prayer. They looked dominant. They had a game plan. They
executed the perfect game plan.
They absolutely did. And they played relatively mistake-free football, whereas on the other side of the ball, Alabama couldn't get out of their own way, but that's because of what Vanderbilt was throwing at them. And I think Vanderbilt has certainly given the blueprint on how to beat a DeBoer-led Alabama team right now. And there's a lot of questions about Alabama after, in this aftermath of that insane game. But it also does bring up, is Vanderbilt going to be a problem? Now, let's talk about that for just a little bit, because again, we've talked about this. Texas has Vanderbilt on the upcoming schedule, and it's not that far off, right? We play OU, then we play Georgia, and then it's at Vanderbilt. So another opportunity for Vanderbilt to make a statement, if you will. Do you think, are you concerned about Vanderbilt? Does this raise an eyebrow for you? Does this give you pause as you were looking at them before on the schedule versus now? What are your thoughts about Vandy?
Well, we've been talking about Vanderbilt ever since they went, toe to toe with Georgia at home. This QB Diego Pavia, I've heard his name pronounced 98 different ways. So he's the underdog king. This is the third time he's led a team who is a 20-point or more underdog to a win, right? This is going to be the biggest one in Vanderbilt history, right? Leading this one back. He is good. He's inspired his team. He is smart. He is physical. I think the team is taking on his personality. Yes, they are. And their coaching staff, like the game plan they had to make Jalen Milroe look like not the best quarterback that day. And you would think, that's what I was thinking. You would think that the Alabama defense training against that dual threat, speed, power, they're not the same quarterback, but they have similar qualities, Diego Pavia, that they would be prepared for that. They had no answer, and they looked a mess. But Vanderbilt did that to them. And then Vanderbilt also had a great plan on defense to make Jalen Milroe look pedestrian that day.
Vanderbilt made Jalen Milroe look like what Alabama fans accused Jalen Milroe of being last year, right? Like, Bama fans are a tough fan to please. I get it. They're spoiled. They're a spoiled fan base. They've had a lot of success, obviously. And I remember last year after the Texas game, a lot of the Bama fans are saying, bench this bum. He's no good. What are we doing with him? And then, of course, he went on to have a great season. So it definitely, when a team goes up against him and prepares well against Milroe, it is possible to make him look human, right? Like you said, make him look pedestrian. And Vanderbilt did a great job with that. It does, for me, it brings up some concerns. That's a heavy word. I think they are still a very beatable team for Texas, but it certainly gives you a little more pause than you might have had a few weeks ago looking at Vanderbilt as we go into Nashville. They're going to be amped up. They've gotten a taste of that success. There's blood in the water, right? They know that they can beat very good teams now. So, we've talked about
confidence. They were saying we want Texas, right? Weren't they chanting we want Texas after beating Bama? I love that. Keep that energy.
Keep that energy.
And how the announcers had to say like 98 times during the broadcast that 75-80% of the stadium was actually Bama fans, and there was only a small section of Vanderbilt fans actually there to see the biggest upset in their history. But I'm sure by the time we get to Texas, some of those people will take their tickets off the sell site and they'll actually come to the games.
That just became a very expensive ticket, right?
Good thing we have ours.
Right. One of the tickets that would have been the cheapest on the schedule now becomes a more expensive ticket. But
good for them.
Good for Vandy. I again, seeing upsets like that, seeing great games like that only makes college football better. I am confident that Alabama will respond. But it does bring up some questions. I wanted to ask you about this. Is a DeBoer-led Alabama in trouble? Are there some discipline problems there? What are your takes on Alabama this year?
Well, let's see. So in the last 6 quarters or so, they've got blown out by Georgia. They survived at home. They gave up 40 to Vanderbilt. Their players, so not only is their defense falling apart, but their player behavior, like there's some funky stuff happening. Let's look at, so Malachi Moore, he had a couple of instances in the game. First is here, he grabs when Diego Pavia is on the ground, he like hits his helmet into the ground. We'll watch this.
Getting a first down, story of the game. Story of the game. Getting a first down, story of the game.
Top of him in a tackle, but then grabs his helmet and shoves his helmet on the ground. And then towards the end of the game, the ref is setting up. He's throwing a fit, and then the ref sets the ball and he like kicks the ball gets mad and kicks the ball. Like number 13, he walks up, the ref sets the ball and he goes and kicks it because he's mad like a toddler. He's like, oh man, and just kicks it. Like, I understand it's tense and frustrating and things aren't going your way.
Well, there's no excuse for that kind of behavior, in my opinion, especially for a senior, especially for a captain. Look, I get it, but football is an emotional game.
Yep,
Football is a game. It's an intense game. It's, rivalries go crazy, exciting play happens. And for one of your senior leaders, your captain at that, to behave that way and not just like a brief error in judgment. This was consistent over a span of several hours where he was throwing a hissy fit. That to me that's just inexcusable. Now he has gone on to issue an apology. He said, I was emotional. I apologize for my mood outburst. But in my mind, that just that might be the first sign of cracks in the overall program with DeBoer leading Alabama. You can bet your butt you would never see that under a Saban-led team. You just wouldn't. And Saban would have yanked his ass out if he was going to behave like that. You just don't see that kind of stuff. So you wonder a little bit behind the scenes, did DeBoer try to come in and be the cool dad? You know what I mean? The fun guy, and where he's trying to be more friends than coach with the team, because that's hard to reel back in. That's really hard to reel back in once you've established that kind of dynamic. And I wonder, is this the beginning of the crack in what we see in the foundation of Alabama football, or is this an isolated incident? I don't know. I mean, time will tell with that, but it certainly does bring up some questions and make you wonder what the rest of this program is going to look like after a few years under DeBoer.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he posted an apology on Instagram, which is fair. It takes a grown up to apologize and admit they were wrong. I would love to see what DeBoer does. I'm sure it's all taken care of in-house or behind scenes, and that's their business. But, he just said his behavior was selfish and unacceptable. That's not how he wants to represent himself. And he will continue to work and improve on himself to conduct himself in a first-class manner. It was well-written, and all you can do is say, good luck. I hope you... It was an intense, crazy moment. And you can just imagine it's not just losing any game. It's losing to Vanderbilt. Can you,
look,
as number one team in the country, they already know, like, he's probably already thinking, like, when he comes back to Tuscaloosa, what is in store for him? So can you imagine, like, it's not excusable, like he said himself, it's inexcusable to behave that way. But I can just imagine, like, the boiling frustration that's in you, knowing all what's coming for you after that.
But, no question. Yeah, so I think. Oh, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw some of the backlash from Bama fans, who we all knew were going to have a very even-tempered and reasonable response to this loss to Vanderbilt, right? But look, there's already been some backlash against the coach. There's already some heat on that program on are they performing up to the Alabama standard? So I think it's going to be interesting to watch out how that plays and to see really how the team reacts, how the coaches react, and how the team responds to a big loss like this. Now, before we move on, I do want to ask a quick question. What do you think is a more painful loss? Alabama losing to Vandy or Texas losing to Kansas at Kansas?
I would say because we weren't number one at the time, losing just the scenario, being the number one team and so Vanderbilt has played the number one team 60 times before and they were 0-60. Being the first time in 61 matches that Vanderbilt beats a number one team, I think there's more to it. Like Texas losing, our coach was on his way out the door. It was awful. It was painful. It was embarrassing. It will still be one of the most embarrassing losses for Texas in the last 20 years, 30 years. But we weren't some dominating number one team in the country coming off 10 years of royalty.
Right. We didn't have a dynasty.
Yeah, we were bad Texas firing our coach in a minute.
Right, agreed. I agree with you whole-heartedly.
Yeah, it was awful. But
As painful as it was to be at that game and to witness that game and to have to drive home to Austin, Texas from Lawrence, Kansas after that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think a bigger beatdown, a bigger, more embarrassing loss is losing to Vandy. Now, I will say this: I do think that Vanderbilt is a better team than that Kansas team was that beat us. But I will
oh,
say
absolutely, that
that
Vanderbilt
Kansas team,
team looks good.
yeah, that Kansas team was on the rise. They weren't there yet, but and Vandy has shown us now a couple times that they're not to be taken lightly. And if you overlook them or look past them, they will make you pay for it. So pay attention, Texas. That's definitely something that we don't want to get caught with our pants down like Alabama did. So that we'll talk about that more as that comes up, of course, too.
Yeah.
So
All right. So let's wrap up a few more of the games that happened this weekend, and then we'll look at how that affected the AP Top 25. So the Aggies looked really good at home with Connor Weigman back. Word is the Missouri coach was so convinced Marcel Reed was going to be the quarterback and practiced for Marcel Reed and was convinced they wouldn't put Weigman back, and they did, and Weigman ripped them up. The Aggies looked good. They moved up in the rankings. Thoughts
they
on that?
did.
Missouri looked
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
both
Look,
Aggies looked good, really good. Missouri looked wretched.
yeah,
Both
that's a good point. And look, I you had picked A&M to win this game. I had picked Missouri to eke it out, but Missouri showed absolutely zero signs of life. They couldn't do
they quit
anything
in the
right.
second quarter.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I mean, you don't like to say that about a team that you're not super knowledgeable about. I got to say, I don't know a ton about Missouri, but watching them through and through, it just really looked like that team gave up. There were guys that were just kind of going, half speed, chasing people down. I agree. Wigman was a man on a mission. He was not going to be beat. He had a point to make, a point to prove, and he made that statement. He really did. So credit to A&M. They looked like a really good team. I think them landing kind of where they did, I was expecting A&M to be bumped up to about a 15, 16 team. And they got that, and I think that's fair. I think moving on, for all the talk that A&M has about how easy Texas's schedule is, again, I'm using heavy air quotes with that, but how easy Texas's schedule is, A&M really has the gift of the schedule, like you mentioned at the top of this program. A&M doesn't have to play Alabama. They don't have to play Georgia. Realistically, they don't have to play Ole Miss. Realistically, they're not playing Tennessee, right? Realistically,
I don't think
the
so.
hardest team that they have coming up is Texas. There is now a distinct possibility. And look, I'll own this. At the beginning of the season, I thought A&M was going to be a 7-5 team. Looking at how they're playing or how they played against Missouri, there's some question now. Looking at the back end of their schedule, I still see a potential for them to maybe fumble the ball and lose focus on a couple of games. I think LSU is going to be one that's turned into a rivalry that they don't talk about. I think LSU is going to be a highly motivated team playing A&M, so that's going to be a game to pay attention to. But yeah, look, there is potential for A&M to run the rest of their schedule up until they get to Texas. So that's something to keep an eye on for Texas fans. Obviously the team's going to want to be ready going into that. A&M looked like a really good team. Now, the question becomes, was it A&M being a really good team or Mizzou just being vastly overrated? And I'm going to go ahead and say I think it's a little column A, little column B here, right? I agree with you wholeheartedly when you said that Mizzou just looked like trash. They had no business being in the top 10. We said that last week. Despite the hype around them, there hadn't been a whole lot that Mizzou had done as a team to go, yeah, they deserve to be top 10, but there they were. And I think they got called out. I don't know how the rest of their season ends up, but you got to think it's not going to be great for Missouri. I think that's kind of the last we're going to hear about them for this season. So, a very interesting game to watch. Again, from the Texas perspective, certainly makes you go, okay, and we see you. We see what you're doing, and seeing Wigman play to the best of his ability, when I think a lot of the fan base around him had kind of given up on him too. It definitely gives you reason to go, okay, all right, we're paying attention. We notice. So glad that we have them at the end of the season, and I think that's going to be a really incredible matchup when we get to that game.
Yep. All right. Did you watch the Miami at Cal game? Cal had.
I did. I even stayed up for it.
Yeah, me too. And it was an hour ahead for me too. So it was so late. Cal, Cal had college game day. They had a great crowd. It was sold out game. They were up 35-10 in the third quarter. And then here comes Cam Ward, right? Just moving them down the field. Again, this game ended with a really shady. Did the refs help them out with an obvious to me and the announcers and everybody watching? Here, I'll play it for you. Megan, do you think this is targeting?
And now they'll check him out. Have a look at it. What do you think here, Brock?
Well, we got to look for an indicator. Let's start with that. We know there's contact.
Look,
I mean, that
how
is
is
the definition of targeting.
How is it not targeting? It literally ticked, in my opinion, almost every single box required to qualify to be targeting. Of all of the things, all the different boxes that you could tick for it to be targeting, it ticked almost every single one. There was launching, there was crown of the helmet contact, there was lowering the head, there
Defensive
was now
player,
yeah. Look, he had taken off running at that point, so there is he a defenseless player? I don't know that. Maybe not, but certainly all those other things, right? Like lowering the head, hitting with the top of the crown of the helmet, launching, spearing. I don't see how you watch that on multiple replay and then go, nah, nothing to see here, folks. So yeah, I think once again, Miami, I think Cal was shafted in this game. Now they certainly, Cam Ward
they
certainly
blew a
showed,
lead way before this play.
They did. Again, I think the fatigue, the Miami is a very good team. There's no question. They're a good team. But
With
notice
no
I said good, not great. But yeah, I mean, the fatigue set in. You could see Cal just kind of running out of gas. But all that being said, you hate to see a game like that with that much emotion being played and coming down to a no call that really affects the outcome of the game. Because had that call been made, it would have turned over the ball. Cal would have gotten it and could have gone into victory formation at that point, I believe, with the time that was left on the clock. So you hate to see a game be determined by a controversial no call. Again, yes, you can make the argument you should have done more to not be in that position, but I think Cal did do a lot, right? And I don't know. You just hate to see a game end like that. So I'll leave it at that. I will say this, like we said about Missouri. I am not convinced that Miami is a top 5 team. I think they're a very good team, but they're also in a crap ass league, right? Like they're in a terrible conference, and I don't know that they've really proven themselves enough. I'm not convinced they deserve to be in the top 5. I know this is going to ruffle your feathers a little. I probably would have put Penn State higher and had them up there instead of Miami. But, here we are.
My eyeballs tell me Penn State is more complete than Miami.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, Miami, they had that crazy great play with, a couple minutes left, this massive bomb away from their own end, got, down the field, scored the touchdown, and then finished with the interception when Cal was trying to get the ball with a minute left, trying to get back in the game and take the lead again. But Cal lost at home, blew their big college game day game. Minnesota, USC, that was a good game. This back and forth traveling across the country thing that we've been talking about, it's going to have its toll, and it looked like it had its toll on USC.
Yeah, it sure does. Look, we've mentioned this before. It is mind-blowing to me that there are student athletes out there that are going to have to travel those kind of schedules and those kind of hours and cross those kind of time zones for conference games, time in and time out, time and time again. I think we've talked about this in the past. Are we going to see fatigue from these teams? Is this going to affect recruiting long term? Is this going to affect how the teams are playing it? And I'll be honest with you, Rocky, I have to agree. I think that you're seeing that fatigue. Look, Lincoln Riley's USC has its own problems. I'm not saying it doesn't. But when you're taking student athletes and you're hauling them across, the 3 time zones to the 4th time zone, they're playing games, and then they have to come back, and then they have a short week where they're, oh, by the way, also students, and they have to prep again. I just don't see how this is sustainable. I don't see how it's good for the student athlete. I don't see how it's good for the program. The only entity I feel like this is good for is the conferences for their money, the TV deals, right? But You just got to wonder how long is this going to last, and what casualties are we going to see before some changes are made with alignment and these kind of crazy schedules. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure.
All right. USC and Minnesota were tied for a while, 17 all. And then Minnesota had this goal line. They were at the goal line, first and goal, second and goal, and then finally got it in on fourth and goal, but the ref said no touchdown. And then they reviewed it and it was a touchdown. So they went crazy. Minnesota wins the game 24-17. That was actually a really good game in the fourth quarter. The rest was kind of slow. But let's see how that affected the AP top 25 after week 6 of play. Texas, of course, was off, but we still found a way to be number 1 again. So Ohio State still also undefeated. They Oregon, we'll talk about them in a second with what's happening this coming weekend. Penn State, they're up there, number 4. And then Georgia, who lost to Bama, is ranked ahead of Bama. And then here's 6 Miami. We'll see if Clemson doesn't get them. Alabama dropped to 7. Tennessee dropped all the way down to 8. This is so funny. Ole Miss 9. It's like they want to do everything they can to keep the SEC up top. And then here's Clemson, who's actually a better team than Miami now in week 6, week 7. And then the rest of the top 25. SMU hanging in there. Pittsburgh still hanging in there. Indiana. It's a pretty different group this year. 15
it is
a different group. BYU's up to 14. There's several Big 12 teams in there.
Yeah, it is. Look, again, with Penn State being where they're at, jumping up to number 4, I think that, again, there's a little bit of question, who have they played yet? But like you just mentioned earlier, eyeball test says they're a better team than Miami. I'm still not convinced that Miami is a top 5 team. I would not say that if you put Miami and Alabama in a game right now, I'm not going to say that Miami's for sure going to win that game. I don't know. There's certainly more. It's not quite as clean cut as it has been in years past. And maybe we're seeing a little bit, like you mentioned, in the 15 through 25. Maybe we're seeing a little bit of that NIL and transfer portal culture coming through, right? Like it is. We've seen so many people when the transfer portal came up, and then of course NIL became a thing. Oh, this is going to destroy college football and ruin it. Maybe what we're seeing is there's a little bit more parity between the teams. There's a little bit more opportunity for really good players to come in and say, hey, I've got an opportunity to play here for a school I might not have considered before. And I think we're starting to see that play out a little bit now that we've had a few years in the transfer portal madness, and people are some teams are figuring out how to really use that well, and some haven't quite caught on yet. But I would say the portal is kind of showing some traces in there in the 15 through 25 for sure, to see how they're playing out. So you love to see it. I think it's fun to see teams like, hey, go SMU. Good for you being up there. Look at you go.
All right. Michigan lost at Washington, the rematch of the college football championship, and they dropped down to 24. So let's look at just really quick this coming weekend. We're going to pick all these games on Thursday, the best ones, but just to get an idea of what shakeup is happening again this coming weekend. Number 3 against number 2. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas against Oklahoma, Penn State, USC, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, Florida, Kansas State, Colorado. Like there's some good games this coming weekend that are all going to shake up this top 25 again, this top 10 again. It could be shaken up. So there we go. All right. Let's do a few minutes, kind of some thoughts about this coming weekend, because we just mentioned this is a big weekend. It's Red River Rivalry, Red River Shootout.
Exactly why you shouldn't call it the Red River Rivalry. It is the Red River Shootout. Red River Rivalry only sounds like Elmer Fudd. It is I feel sorry for the announcers when they have to say that over and over again as the official name. Listen, it's the Red River Shootout to me. It will always be the Red River Shootout to me. That's how it will live and die in my heart.
Yeah. All right. So I know you really, really love the atmosphere. This game day is not for me, but Sark loves it. Let's hear what Sark has to say about Red River Shootout atmosphere.
Rivalry. I love pulling into the state fair and seeing fans from both teams, and horns up, horns down, all the stuff's flying around the buses. I love walking the field. I love the tunnel. I love both teams being in the tunnel together. I love coming down and their fans on top of us. I love looking at the sea of burnt orange and running to that end of the field. I love the intensity of the game. I love how crowded the sidelines are. I don't know how so many people get on the sidelines for this game, but they do. Hey, whatever. You know, I turn around, and Governor Abbott's right next to me on the field. I mean, there's just stuff that happens in this game that I think that's what makes this game special. And like I said, we're fortunate to be part of it, and this week's no different.
He loves everything about this game.
It was a love letter from Sark. You love to hear it. So, yeah, look, I know it's not your jams, but I have to say, I love everything about this game. I think it's so special. You know, there's been a ton of debate about, what's the biggest and best rivalry now in the SEC, now that Texas and OU are there. And look, I think Kyle Umlang posted a little factoid today that if you combined, or if you looked at the rivalries, the Egg Bowl, the Iron Bowl, all of the SEC rivalries, you know, the world's largest cocktail party, or is that ACC? Anyway, if you combine all of the big SEC rivalries, Texas versus OU has had more top 10 matchups or like ranked matchups than all of those other rivalries combined. I think this is like, this is like the 40th time or something like that Texas and OU will both be ranked coming into this game. And that's more times that both teams have been ranked compared to all of the other rivalries combined. So for me, there's no question. This is the best rivalry. It's one of the most unique rivalries in the nation. I rank Texas OU as #1 rivalry in college football. I will grant the Ohio State, Michigan, that's a heated, hated rivalry, right? So there's a lot of crazy stuff there.
I think there's a handful. Army, Navy, to me, is
absolutely
up there.
Yeah, it is. But for me, with Texas OU, it's such a unique environment. You're at the world's largest state fair. There's literally, you know, millions of people that filter through the state fair. You're there with, you know, hundreds of thousands of your closest friends. And to see that unique atmosphere where it's literally split down the 50-yard line. I mean, I love Texas social media team released this a couple of years ago where they followed the team out of the tunnel, and it's just their barrage, just a barrage of booze and hatred and just the anger. And you can hear the moment that it clicks over as they cross that 50-yard line, you can hear it shift from the booze and the hatred to the adoration and the love. And
we'll play that video on Thursday.
Yeah, it's just such a cool environment, and it's so unique. And then to have the pageantry of the state fair around you where you can eat your heart out with crazy fried combinations and, you know, drink beer from wax cups and all kinds of stuff, the shows that go on and the auto show, and there's the different things you can do, the midway, the fair. It is such a special, unique environment. And, you know, the fact that the states of Texas and the state of Oklahoma tend to not love each other either just adds to the lore of this game. It's a special place. It's a fun place to be. And I don't know, I'm excited for it. It's one of my favorite times of the year, one of my favorite games every year. And hopefully, look, we'll talk about it more on Thursday. Hopefully Texas shows up and is truly prepared for this game. But as we know, absolutely anything can happen in this rivalry.
Yes, Sark said that today when they asked him what does he think about being 14.5-point favorites, and he's like, I didn't know that. So whether or not he didn't know, because it's hard to miss. Feels like everybody knew they were 2 touchdown favorites, but if he didn't know, he didn't know. But he's just like, doesn't matter. This is the last 9 of the last 10 games have been decided by 1 possession. This is always throw out the records, throw out the resumes, throw out the Vegas odds, throw them out, because you never know what can happen in this game. We'll make all of our great predictions. We'll compare offense, defense, all those things on Thursday. There's so much to talk about with this game. But just kind of, what's your vibe today? How are you vibing about this game going in 5 days out?
Look, I've always got anxiety come the day of this game, but right now, feeling pretty good. I'm not a person to ever get overly confident with this game just because of the nature of the rivalry, but I think the team looks focused. Like we talked about a little bit earlier on this podcast, the team looks loose and relaxed and like they're having a good time, but at the same time intense, right? They're focused, they're locked in, and they know what needs to be done. I think Chip Brown had asked who was it? Asked one of our players, I'd have to go back and look, about the shirts that Danny Sussman had made.
Mookie.
Yeah, he asked your boy
Michael Bass.
Mookie. Right. And about those shirts that were made a year ago when OU beat Texas last minute. And Mookie's response was, I remember everything. So look, they haven't forgotten. This is, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier. This is a mature team. Now we've got a team full of guys that have been there, done that. They've been in this game before. They know what it means. They know how intense it is. They know how crazy it can be. And they have long memories, right? They're not going to forget the pain of losing a game that they think they should have won last year by all intents and purposes, right? They, again, started off a little bit slow, as Texas teams tended to do last year, and then really showed up, played a great game, and then in the last minute, some of Texas's problematic issues reared its ugly head last year. And I think the team this year is very aware of that. They remember, they know, and they're really focused. I think this game has been circled on the calendar since the closing seconds of the game last year. But what's your vibe? What's your feeling going into this game?
Oh, well, you just made me think of something. You talk about the players remembering everything, right? This is also a game where the players are remembered. Like, this is a legacy game. This is an opportunity to leave your legacy. Some of the greatest Longhorns of all time have legacy moments in this game, right? There's opportunities to shift massive momentum, steal, break all Sooner hearts. Like, there's just so many big opportunities, and we can name just the best players who've done it in this stadium. I think about the players that this will be their last Red River rivalry, right? Calvin Banks, Jahdae Barron, Quinn Ewers, right? This is likely his last Red River shootout.
There you go.
What do you think about what's happening in this bye week and this week in preparation? Because they have the added, not so much pressure, because we saw how cool and calm Jahdae was, but the added factor of this is their last big legacy, and this is a national stage, the biggest rivalry of the season for at least Texas and most of college football.
Yeah, look, I think it factors in heavily. We've mentioned this. This is a very mature Texas team, and if you think that it doesn't matter to them, right now they have an opportunity. The seniors right now have an opportunity to leave and not have a losing record against OU. Right? OU has been very good in this game the past decade. Texas has had some flares of greatness, but overall, OU's done a really good job in this game recently. So I think it is important to these guys. And we've talked about this before. This is a very mature Texas team. And look, next year, the button we hit reset, right? We lose a lot of our really great O-line. A lot of those guys are going to be gone to the draft and, from graduating. We lose a lot of senior leadership. Like you mentioned, Quinn Ewers is going to be gone. So this being the last opportunity to make a point, make a statement, and show up against OU, I don't think that's lost on anybody. Look, I think the 49-0 was a statement that this team, a very young version of this team, made. And I think they are wanting to prove that wasn't a fluke, that this is something that this team has it together and knows how to beat OU and knows how to make the statement when it's important. So yeah, I think the seniors, I think that's definitely on their minds, that this is, not just the seniors, but the guys that are looking to move forward next year and go on to the next level. This means the world to them. This is not a small thing in their minds. So yeah, I think that's weighing pretty heavily, and it matters.
I think it matters to Sark, and he's learned a lot about this game. The first year, all gas, no brakes, all gas, no brakes. And the game was literally all gas and then all brakes the first year. The second year was all gas, no brakes. The third year was brakes, gas, brakes, gas, brakes, brakes, gas. It was a mess.
Couldn't figure it out.
So I think he talked about, this is a game where what you've seen on film might not be what you get in the game, and you're going to have to keep adjusting, and you're going to see things you weren't expecting to see. And I'm sure they've got some plays up their sleeve. They got some defensive, positioning and calling that they haven't used before up their sleeve. Like, they're going to, there's a trick though with this game, is because they have to win this game, and they need to win it soundly. But you can't even show too much, because next week you have Georgia, right? Like, do enough to win this game. do enough to win this game, but don't hold back, but also don't show too much. Like there's so much balance that Sark has to.
The expectation is pretty nuts. Yeah.
The good thing is with Quinn, it feels like with Quinn, I think the whole line is a little more focused. Like it felt like with Arch, a fantastic quarterback, but it felt like all the offside, false start, this, that, holding, this, that. It just, not that it was Arch's fault. It just, maybe it was this competition too. It's just a little more disconnected. It felt like Sark gets in his bag when Quinn's behind, got the ball in his hand, and they have way more experience and rapport together. That I feel like if Quinn rolls out there first, Sark is going to have a little pep in his step, and he's gonna have that script rolling, and he's going to be adjusting, which will be with Arch. Next year he'll have more time to develop that with Arch too.
Yeah, look, I think this. Yeah, I think they're ready. I don't know. We'll talk about this more. This is a great preview for our Thursday conversation and preview to OU. But I think we could talk about that a little more. Is this a game that you hold back a little bit because Georgia is after there? Or do you just pull out every stop and do everything you can to stomp them into the ground? I don't know. That's a great thing for us to talk about here on Thursday. Of course, you guys, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you being here. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Again, on YouTube, we are at Fire the Cannon Podcast. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, tell us what you think. Always feel free to leave comments when you're listening. Again, on Instagram and on Twitter or X if you're a new kid. We are Fire the Cannon 1. That is Fire the Cannon and the number 1. We'd love for you guys to be here. So coming up Thursday, live at 3 p.m., we will be taking your comments. We will be talking all of Red River. We call it the shootout round these parts. So Red River shootout, we'll be talking about we'll look forward to see what does Texas need to do? What are keys to the game? What are some corrections that Texas needs to go through? We'll give our predictions, of course. We'll give some score thoughts. And we'll really dive into the players coming back, what we expect of Texas, and how we think this is going to go. All right, y'all. So again, thank you for listening. We appreciate. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, I am Megan.
I'm Rocky.
And we are Fire the Cannon. I love it. Hook 'em, y'all.
All right.